Greetings to all of you. I am honored and excited today to be in conversation with Kathlyn Kingdon, and we're going to be talking about her extraordinary book with Master Djwhal Khul, Whatever Happened to the New Age, and how it's an extraordinary guide to us in this time, in how we're transitioning out of the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, and how we can be in this process of transformation in this time. So thank you for being here today, Kathlyn.
You're very welcome. It's utterly my pleasure.
Well, let me briefly introduce you and then we'll get into our conversation, because you've done this channeling with Master DK for 42 years now, but you have a background before that. You're actually an extraordinary Renaissance woman, gifted conductor, composer, lecturer, psychotherapist, and author. I'm not sure how many lives you've had in this lifetime. Founder of Creative Directions, the Vajra Flame Foundation, the Rocky Mountain Esoteric School, among other programs. For 35 years, you've led seminars, retreats, and pilgrimages throughout the world and have an international following. And you've been in this 42-year partnership with Ascended Master Djwhal Khul, bringing forth his third dispensation of wisdom teachings. There was Madame Blavatsky in the late 1800s, then Alice Bailey for 30 years, from 1919 to 1949, and now you've been doing this for 42 years. And this book is the latest collaboration of your work with his channeling. So I'm excited to be in this conversation with you today.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be here because I totally respect your work as well. And it's, I think this is a time when those of us who are really engaged in making the paradigm shift, it's important for us to connect, because even if we haven't had years and years of history of working together, it's pretty clear that we are now. And frankly, there are many of us. So making connection with you has been really a joy for me. And thank you for your work. And thank you for that beautiful aura you're wearing today.
Thank you. And really, this is extraordinary work that you've done. And talk a little bit about this book. You were talking before we got on the recording how this was a 2.5-year process of collaborating with Master DK to bring this forward, because this is such a critical time in our human evolution on the planet.
Well, yes. And in one way of looking at it, I would say this book is the culmination of my work with Master, because we draw on teachings that sometimes are the early part of 2001, 2, 3, early, some of them even earlier than that. And so we began with him selecting a mountain of prior teachings that he'd given that are recorded. Not all of them are even transcribed yet, but he said, this is where we're going to start. And we began working with them. And as I'd pull up the transcript of one and I'd be looking at it and he'd be editing it as we go along. Oh, no, don't need that. Take that out. And basically anything that wasn't utterly contemporary was either shifted or removed. And, so much has happened in our world since COVID. We think differently about things. I think the way we think about our work has really changed. The way we think about our relationships has changed a lot as well. And so we are in a process of being changed ourselves, shifted, morphed, you might say, into a new reality. The question is, are we going to come out of this process we're in right now, which I see as highly transformative? Are we going to come out of it with compassion or bitterness? And, we have the capacity in all of us to go either way, and we're given free will. If I really want to get bitter about it all, I can. But there's another route that I think is more productive and it's better for humanity. It's better for each of us as well. And that is the path of love and compassion with a genuine openness so that we can see what is happening rather than getting lost in what we think should be happening or as the practice of some is to just recount what's not happening. And I think this is an extraordinary time. It really is. None of us were prepared for it. And that's those of us who have been working with masters and on a spiritual path for years and years and years. We didn't know what it was going to look like. I remember the 60s, when we were going to, we did all those wonderful musicals, Jesus Christ Superstar, and all of them that were about the new age, the dawning of Aquarius, and partly they got it right. It is to evolve into an age of love and harmony. Are we there yet? I don't think so. Are we working on this? Yes. But I see all of that as really valuable for giving us seed thoughts, very important. So the book itself really is kind of a culmination of our work together. It's a long book because it's been 42 years. And the really early stuff isn't in there because in those days, there weren't that many channels around, for one thing. And he was really trying to connect with people exactly where they were. And there was a kind of new age spirituality that people were participating in that said you can only have positive thoughts. You have to always have positive thoughts. Positive, but it got fundamentalized, So if you didn't have a positive thought, they were wrong. But then I knew people who were very controlling with this. When you were around them, you couldn't talk about certain subjects because that wasn't positive. And they didn't see it as controlling, but they controlled everybody in their field of acquaintances because if you come into my house, we can't talk about this. Or well, I don't believe that way, so we're not going there. It's just really interesting how we want to get a hold of something and rigidify it. And that is one of the dynamics of the Piscean age that I believe humanity's trying to throw off or maybe just evolve. So the book is great. I say that mainly because for me, it was a great effort. 2.5 years of going back over the material, changing the order, and new bits coming in all along the way. So if people are really serious about understanding, what the Piscean age was about, and this isn't just a criticism of the things that are still hard that we haven't worked out. The Piscean age brought us the age of technology, which right now our whole world depends on. And that's beautiful and wonderful and exciting. But on the other hand, there are some things we swept under the rug that need to be dealt with.
Well, and that's one of the profound themes from my perspective in the book is the discussion of how we got out of balance, actually starting in the age of Aries, but carried that through the age of Pisces, and that we need to heal those imbalances to be opening to these new paradigms of the Aquarian age that are about love and harmony and being in balance. But one of the things that you discuss together in the book that I think is very important is coming out of Alice Bailey's work, that the age of Pisces was shaped by the sixth ray, the ray of devotion. It was meant to call us back into more of a mystical understanding of who we are in relationship with the cosmos. But the shadow side of that the book discusses that we got caught in is addiction. Yeah. And that we got caught in this paradigm of separation instead of coming back into that understanding that we're a part of the oneness of all that is Pisces.
Yes.
So we carried that now to this threshold of the Aquarian age, which is the seventh ray. Can you talk some about the meaning of what that energetic is, the seventh ray?
Well, yes, it's a very beautiful field of energy that to some extent it's always been here, but maybe not used by most of humanity. Now, the Saint Germain people refer to it as the violet flame. It's the same energy, but their meditations of working with the violet flame in one way or another are totally apropos for what we're going through today. And that is, see, the seventh ray is a ray of transmutation, or a ray of really stepping out of one paradigm and into another. It's an exciting ray. It's a fun ray, but we must not get caught in just the fun part, because then we're not paying attention, you see. Oh, I love the way this energy feels. Good. Use it to get well. Use it to help others. Use it to clarify all the thoughts that come into your mind. And it is, I think in some ways in the old esoteric material, the seventh ray was referred to as the ray of ceremonial magic. And I really wish they hadn't used that word or that terminology, because people think of magic often from the ego perspective. Now, I'm going to use it on you because I want you to be more like me, or I want you to do the things. And so let's just change that person with this transmutation ray of energy. It doesn't work that way. It is available for people to use on themselves or with themselves, or perhaps in groups. It's very powerful if, let's say, we have a healing group and everybody comes with whatever they're wanting to be healed from. For some, it could be very serious diseases. For others, it could just be, I have a tendency to get viruses all the time, or something like that, which we don't really see that as a major medical threat. It's just kind of life at this time when we have a lot of viruses. But in using this violet flame or this ray of transformation, it's really a wonderful thing we sort of offer to it what our beliefs are now. And the real magic is in the shifting of our belief system. What is possible? Here's what I come to with this habituated tendency to get viruses. So what might be possible for me if I released that as who I am and didn't tie that habituated pattern to my own identity, you see? Yeah. I mean, this is huge. People do it all the time. I am the one who gets all the viruses. I had this was when in my psychotherapeutic practice years ago. This beautiful woman, wonderful woman, came in for some therapy. Very, very spiritual individual, and an artist, very kind, loving person. And I said, "Well, at your core, who are you?" So this, and she says, well, she thought about it. And what came out of her mouth totally surprised me. She said, I'm the one who hates my mother. Mm. Now, she had carried that as her identity because she felt bad about it for years. I mean, she was probably in her late 50s, early 60s at the time we met. And to think that she carried that as her identity, it showed me we had some serious dismantling to do. But you see, people do this all the time. They take whatever their habituated pattern is, and they say, this is me. That's not true. And in working with alcoholics, I've heard, the first time I heard this master did it, we had someone come once who did the proper thing, as if she were in an AA meeting. She says, my name is such and such, and I'm an alcoholic. And he just reached across the table, took her hands, and he said, and so much more. That's the part I want to help you discover. See?
It's part of what's really beautiful about this is, from the astrological perspective, the age of Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. Uranus is that planetary archetype that helps us connect to divine mind, that helps us cut through, break free from whatever is out of balance, that isn't true to who we really are. And part of what's powerful in this book is it feels like it's trying to guide us. It's profound, but there's also practical exercises and meditations, but it's trying to guide us through this time of transmutation, to release these paradigms, not only of our sense of ourselves individually, but collectively.
Oh, precisely.
To come back into this awareness that we're each a soul self, a fractal of cosmic consciousness.
Yeah.
But we're part of this wholeness and consciousness of the cosmos, of the earth, of all that is.
Well, you see, this is very interesting because, this was probably 10 years ago or so now. Masters gave people a mantra. And he gave it in his classes and so on at the time. Some still use it, and periodically on the website we have these daily thoughts. And recently he's been using thoughts that other humans do, because he said, wisdom is wisdom. It doesn't have to come through this way. But he said, here's a mantra for the new age. I am in the universe, and the universe is in me. Mm. And he took that from something Yogananda said. His students were asking him about his reality and what his consciousness was like, and so on. And he said, well, that reality is in the body too. See, he said, in me, 10,000 suns and moons do shine. And Master said he meant that literally, because part of what we're doing here is trying to embody the universe. So we can't do the whole thing, but little bits of it. And through that, the cosmos expands every time we expand with this knowledge that the universe is in us. Now, it may seem figuratively or symbolic, and I think it is. And I think we start there. And then we just open ourselves to see what could possibly happen if I really let in this paradox. I am in the universe, and the universe is in me. And it's very powerful, really.
It's extraordinarily powerful. And it reminds me of Jude Curvin's book, Cosmic Hologram, that everything is, we're a part of this holographic reality. Yes. So everything is mirroring everything else. So yes, we are part of the cosmos, and the cosmos is in us. But it as the book describes, it expands our awareness then into that more macro level of realizing.
We simply must. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to underline that. We simply must get a bigger consciousness individually about how we believe about things and what we think this world is. Master has said, and I see it too, and I watch it in myself, how we are defined by our culture, our cultural values, our cultural beliefs about anything, our cultural roles. All of those things limit the divine essence that's in here. It relates more to the cosmos out there, more connection maybe to the sun than as its reality, than fitting into social norms or even planetary norms for that matter. And it's really interesting to think about, how a master did this teaching probably 10, 15 years ago now, about how we relate to our continents. And nobody does that. They relate to the global whole, you see, or my little area on the planet. So he said, okay, how do you relate to your continent? And he gave the history of all the continents on Earth, about how we started out as Pangaea and this great splitting apart happened and how that affected our consciousness. But really, it's only one. Pangaea was one island on this planet of water. And then with the tectonic movements and so on, these pieces of land separated, moved apart, and we kind of got righteous about this. Well, this is my culture. We do it this way here. And we think that means something. Now, it's useful in the sense that it helps us negotiate the norms of our society. But beyond that, when you take a look at the planet rather than just a look at my little area, it's full of cultural norms. A classic example was when the Olympics were in China. There was a time when the cameras were going through the street markets and stuff of all the people that were around the Olympic Center, and they went through some of the food markets. And one of the Chinese delicacies was skewered and roasted scorpion. Mm-hmm. And it watched the Americans and the Canadians particularly come up and see what to do with that. And they were like, repulsed by it. But to the Chinese, it's a delicacy. The stinger is removed. There's no poison coming into the cell from eating it. But they said, oh, you should taste it. It's really good. But the culture, we're defined, or we allow ourselves to be defined by our culture. And Master said the goal right now is that we must become planetary citizens. And we don't quite know what to do with that, but it's time, I believe, to start taking that into meditation and seeing where it leads us.
Well, and part of the beauty of becoming planetary citizens is it parallels honoring biodiversity,
Yeah.
that we can be united as a global community, but honor our exquisite diversity,
Yes.
and yet be really seeing ourselves as all interconnected and these unique expressions of the consciousness of the planet. And I love how the book talks about our need to get out of that individual focus or
Yeah.
that insular community focus to understand our interconnectedness with the consciousness of the earth and our connection to the development of the consciousness of the cosmos.
Yes. Because I don't think the stars think of themselves as eyes. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think they do. That Robert Frost poem, Choose Something Like a Star. It's a great poem because this person is talking to a star and say, look at you, you're up there, you're ephemeral, but say something to us. We can comprehend and learn by heart. And then when alone, repeat, say something. And it says, I burn.
Mm.
But tell us what elements you blend, talk centigrade, talk Fahrenheit, all of this. We want to know these little details. And it says, I burn. But then it ends with, and steadfast as Keats' eremite, not even stooping from its sphere, it asks a little of us here. It asks of us a certain height. So when at times the mob is swayed to carry praise or blame too far, we may choose something like a star to stay our minds on and be stayed. I think that really speaks to our time, even though it was written. Robert Frost probably wrote it in the 50s, but it's amazingly potent in really seeing what we're asking all the time, all these details, that the star says it doesn't matter what my temperature is, or even what I'm burning. Yes, you can find all that out, but be stayed and burn. And I think in a way, this paradigm shift is asking something similar of us. That might not be the phraseology that works for everyone, but at least for me, it really works. And it's been something I've carried for years.
Well, part of what's beautiful about that too is we're literally made of stardust.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
our sun that we often visualize as our solar hero in our solar system, our sun is a star. It's
Exactly.
stars remind us that we're a part of the light that fills the cosmos and that we need to be in this transmutation to shift. One of the things, a major theme in the book is the importance of our shifting our paradigms, coming into new myths, new understandings of ourselves, so that we're not carrying these out of balanced power over paradigms and myths of being separate into the
Yes.
new age in a way that would keep us on a path of destruction. We need to be in this healing and
Very so.
transformational process.
Well, Master says that the age of Pisces was the age of the I. The age of Aquarius is the age of the we. And we have to learn what that means. It's not just a collection of different eyes. It's really more than that. It goes back to our roots of being connected to the entire creative process of the universe. And I remember Master talking to a group of people one time they all had scientific bents of one kind or another. And it was kind of like that poem, wanting to know what about this and about this. And he said, well, you can talk about the sun all you want, but that doesn't mean you have a relationship with it. Now, what these Paleolithic people did was they sat around the fire at night and they taught their children, you see that star? That's your star. It was shining the night you were born. This happens, even the Aboriginals did the same thing. When a child is born, the parent has to find its star. And there is a connection forged. So, I mean, they're probably more facile at recognizing stars than many of us are today. But that star will be with you your entire life. It's your brother, sister, familial connection. And we've kind of gotten away from all of that. With our technological advances, it's more important to understand what's the heat of the sun, how long is it going to burn, and how will it ultimately go out? I see so much scientific stuff printed about what happens when the sun burns out. And, it's at least another 15 billion years. Maybe look at what we need to do right now. So,
Well, and it's that getting mired in scientific materialism and getting mired in left brain ways of analyzing things as if they're objects, a part of us. And, you and Master in the book talk about the importance of reweaving right brain ways of knowing with left brain ways.
Very much so.
Of wisdom with knowledge, and also of coming back into that ancient indigenous wisdom of being in relationship with all that is. In the astrology course I teach, the Aquarian Shamanic Astrology course, we commune and converse with the planets. We honor their consciousness.
Yes.
The book so speaks to how we need to come back into that awareness that the plants are conscious, the animals are conscious, the earth herself is in her own journey of healing and ascension. And when we, as humans, come back into that right relationship, then we can be on that journey of evolution and growth with the earth and all that is.
Yes. Well, I think it seems to me that Master's entire connection with the earth, even maybe through Blavatsky, certainly Alice, and now through me and other channels as well, is really about this paradigm shift. Now, the interesting thing about the work of Alice, and I've never read it because in the beginning he asked me not to. He said that influences your subconscious, and I don't want that in there. So when I come through you, I come through your subconscious to a certain extent. I want ours to be fresh, and I don't want to pick up the verbiage or the turns of phrases or anything that I use through Alice. And so, but even her work was, he said that when he came through Alice, he had a different mission, which was to really expand consciousness to the possibilities that are so much broader. So a lot of that was a lot of technical information about different things, but also a lot of spiritual things. And I confess, he waxes mental through me as well. But that is because we have such a deep need for understanding. Very few people are able to sit in the presence of a teacher and just absorb a teaching. That's a paradigm that was a long, long time ago that has been lost. And we're trying to regain that. And he feels like that's more accessible through some formation of a we. Now, granted, we includes everything. So it does include nature. It includes the plants. It includes the animals. It includes the minerals, too. They're all part of this we that is here. And on Earth, we've just taken form. The consciousness that we think of as our little consciousness, we kind of think of it started when we're born and ending when we die. No, it is a flow of divine awareness as it comes through each of us in our own unique way. This is where astrology really speaks to the uniqueness. It's not only that you have maybe a group of Capricorns, which I happen to be, but they're not alike. There are certain things that weave them together, maybe some certain basic places where we resonate. We don't have the same career. We don't behave the same in our relationships. We don't necessarily, we could read an article and get different ideas out of it. So it's not sameness being superimposed upon our creative experience. It has to do with these influences that we can use however we choose to do so. We can use them to build ourselves up, to help us be the very best that we can be, which is our gift to others. There's no gift in our being our worst self. But then we do find that, channeling is such a remarkable way of showing there's a bigger picture going on. And I don't think it stops with Master. I think he's channeling something even maybe too big for me to understand. We can call it the source of all being, but that too has sort of become a glib answer. In the West, fewer people use the terminology God. than used to, because there's a whole paradigm about that, who God is, and what our relationship is supposed to be, and who's in control. And there's all that history through the Jewish Bible, what the plagues and the sending of plagues because people didn't please God, and all of that has to go. It doesn't take us to a higher version of ourselves. Historically, it tells us a lot about people at another time, perhaps. And at this time, many of us still want the concrete code of ethics that we follow. And Master says it's time of raising the divine within ourselves. We need to call ourselves to a very mindful state where we consciously make the best choices. Not just, you ask me a question, oh yeah, my ego likes this. Or who I am as a constellation of a Capricorn with all of these different influences in my chart, is so much bigger than that. To be able to show up and say, okay, yeah, that's one element, but the important thing is how I use my consciousness. And I think that's what we're all doing. And this is what I understand from the book. We are here to evolve humanity's collective consciousness. And that, my dear friend, is a we, as you know, because you talk about it all the time.
Yes. And to really realign with the soul self.
Yes.
That knows we're here to have the human experience, to grow and evolve, and to bring our unique gifts out in service to others, service to the community.
Precisely.
And talk a little bit about, there's a whole theme in the book about the importance of aligning the head and the heart and the gut. Can you speak to that?
Yes. Actually, this goes back to some of the older teachings where people recognize that there are 3 perception centers. And Oscar Achazo is one, so certainly the Gurdjieff is another. But this alignment of these perception centers is really important. So the head center arises with certain spiritual traditions. I think Buddhism is often referred or thought of as a head-centered thing. There's a lot of understanding, but innate within it is then you've got to transcend all of that. You just, okay, learn it, and then what's beyond? And if you look at heart type spiritual traditions, certainly we see it in Hinduism. Certainly we see it in some Christianity. Christianity has gotten such a smattering, really, of different proclivities that addresses a whole lot of things. But so we would say that the heart center is the center of devotion, and the head center maybe is how we approach the world and everything and try to understand it. Both are important, but the gut is much more instinctual. It's where people just know what the right thing to do is, or where, and you see this all the time. A person will say, be asked a question to answer and say, no, that's not right. No, you've got, and you can always tell that gut person because they don't stop to think about it. It's instinctual. And so Oscar Achazo, I guess, was the one that said there's another way. Or, no, pardon me, that was Gurdjieff, the 4th way, wasn't it? Anyway, he said there's another way. And that is to learn to use all of these centers. Now, we likely have a preferred center. People who are referred to as head types will always go to the head to understand. And that's basic and innate to who they are. But there are people who are much more feeling type. And, feelings have to be monitored because they can run a person amok just as much as a faulty idea can for a head person. So, but they're much more comfortable in coming from this place where they feel a connection, or they feel truth, or they feel Master's presence, you see, when I'm working. And then there's the gut, it just instinctively knows. Okay, now if we go back to the Taoism, is classic gut spirituality. It's connected to everything in nature, for one thing. And for another thing, it relies upon direct knowing. And that's a kind of a gut thing. We often think of that as a head thing. But in this system, at least, it's the gut that knows. It's the head that figures out. And it's the heart that expands through feeling, feeling the divine, feeling the presence that's everywhere, the numinous. And I do think, the master talks about this, particularly in the end of the book, that's really, we have to go back to that. We've lost the numinous.
Yeah.
And the Sufis saying something like, there are 1,000 ways to kneel and kiss the ground. What does that mean? Is that kissing dirt? No. It's the ground of being, essence, life force itself.
The sacredness of all
that is. Yes. And so anyway, this fourth way was an attempted ploy at teaching people. I don't mean ploy as if it's not worthy of something. It was an endeavor, really, to teach people how to use all 4 perception centers: the head's knowing, the heart's reaching out and feeling, the gut's instant determination. And so in some of our work, we've done this, we do experiments where people try to really focus on their heart center, and as if their eyes are there. The master does it, get your eyes there, get your eyes out of your head. What is it like to walk through the earth or through your day looking from the heart level? And it changes people. Then he'll tell them, go down to your belly. Take a walk in nature, but put your eyes down there. And you will see things you have never seen with eyes in your head. And so this learning to be fluid with from what place do we see reality? Then to stretch consciousness and say, all right, is it possible to see with eyes in the head and eyes in the heart at the same time? And that's not a right or wrong answer to that. That's an exploration, a call to explore, which is much different than having the answers, isn't it? And I think that's how we'll get through this paradigm shift, is to have the bravery to explore with new eyes and an open system, so our gut can be fed and our divine instinct arise. And we can follow that when it's important to do so. Or we can follow the divine movement in the heart when it's time to do so. Or we can let the divine activate in our head, so where our knowledge increases. If we do that, I mean, if you've got a person with all 3 centers open, that's wisdom in flow right there, you see? Because it's not tied to any one thing.
Well, and it's exquisite how you describe it. And it feels like it's also about not being identified with any one of those centers, but ultimately perhaps seeing through the eyes of spirit, which is able to access all 3.
Well, it's so interesting that you say that, because we always tend to validate however we do it. So, when you look at people, some people are more thinkers, some are more feelers. And each doesn't know really how to go to the other's world. And so the temptation is to say, well, the way they do it isn't as good as the way I do it, or it's not as valid, you see. And it's really hard. Master's done some teachings about the longest journey any of us will ever take is the journey from the head to the heart. And that's really powerful when you stop to think about it. Because the head always wants to know. It wants another fact, another tidbit. What are they doing on this star system? Or who are the space brothers? Or who always give me.
It wants control.
Yes, exactly. And the heart says, well, at least the open heart, the evolved heart says, can I just experience you as you are and try to harmonize with you? That's what an open heart does. There are other versions of heart energy that aren't quite that open, and maybe they do other things. But this ability to have all 3 perception centers open to see where we're going, rather than try to project how it should be or what we think we know. Master says, well, people say, well, here's the Aquarian age. And I'll say, well, how do you know that? You haven't lived in it yet. It's really, really about our experience and our experience without our history. And that is almost impossible, not totally, because where we're going, our history is not going to be helpful.
There was have to be in the liminal time.
Exactly, that threshold place, right? I'm not in and we are there now, astrologically. The Piscean age is there, the Aquarian age is there, and we are on the threshold, or as Master says, in the Bardo journey between the two.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, with the time that we have left, could we get some channeling from Master
Oh,
DK
certainly.
and some
All right,
messages?
just a moment. Well, good morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever you are when you see this. But it's so good to be with you, Heather, and to have a part in the beautiful work that you're doing. Tell me, oh, I can't get out of my role completely. Tell me what you're learning from the book or from having experienced it. What are you learning about you and this thing we call reality?
First of all, it's such an honor to be in your presence. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Oh, you're not so far from my presence. We're old friends.
What's extraordinary for me about the book is not only what I'm learning, but it has an energetic. I find myself resonating with it. I find myself remembering. It's like it's calling me back into that awareness of who I really am as a part of the oneness of all that is, and this whole journey that we've been in, this
Yeah.
journey of consciousness. And it illuminates that, but it activates that within me and opens my heart to that.
And that I think is very well said, because that was exactly my intention. You see, what if you look at my goals, why would we write this? It took a lot of time, a lot of Kathlyn's energy. But if we are to truly integrate what the Piscean age is been about, so that we can step freely without dragging old karma into a new age, I see that as much better for humanity. I think it's much better for the earth. But I looked at all the things that are available out there for people to read. And there is nothing that sums up the Piscean age as an age, and maybe looks at it from different spiritual traditions, different cultures. But you'll notice in the book, I go back and forth from many different spiritual traditions. Sometimes we're looking at more Native American or indigenous spirituality in any place on earth. Other times we look at it more from a Buddhist perspective about how I'm creating things with my mind. That's in the Hindu perspective too. But basically, sometimes we just look at there's a whole chapter on the ego, and we look at it from an Islamic perspective. Actually, not from the current Islamic perspective so much as from the Prophet himself, who said, he would come out of battle, and he's quoted in various Islamic pieces of literature as saying, when he comes out of battle, we have done the battle, the small battle. Now we're going to the big battle, which is the battle of the nafs, which is the Islamic word for ego. And he saw that as much bigger than all the battles that are fought on earth. And since there's so many battles going on the earth right now, we have to say, well, how big is this battle with the ego, if in fact the prophet was correct? And I suspect he was, but it's knowing what we have come through. It's high parts, it's not so high parts, and it's really diluted parts, I think is important if people are going to make this transition well. Because there's so many people, and I hear this sometimes from my students say, well, just wake me when it's over. And I say, no, you don't get off that easy, because you wouldn't know where you were if you didn't go through the journey. And that is really, really important to understand, that this is a journey. I mean, when you look at the cosmos, everything's journeying, isn't it? Everything. So how could it possibly be different for people here on Earth? We're moving into a reality that no one has experienced yet. And I know the mind wants to know where we're going before we get there. And it's, this is how you've trained, I don't mean you personally, but humanity has trained their minds. I won't go if I don't know the scenario, if I don't recognize all the signs that I thought were going to be there. And in a way, we understand that that's really a cry for security, isn't it? Saying, if I turn loose of all my reference points as a person, I would be lost in space. And I can remember in what turned out to be some powerful workshops that I did, where I was really trying to get people to just let go of their reference points. And we did this through various types of meditation. It doesn't work very well with lecture. We can talk about it. We just can't do it that way. So this sense of being moored to reality by one's beliefs, this is how most humans go through their lives. I believe this, so I can't talk to people that believe otherwise because they don't count. Or it can be a self-belief too, whether there are those whose egos are so aggrandized, they think they're better than everybody else, smarter, don't need laws, don't need anything, and then there are those who are on the flip side of that, where their sense of themselves is so debased, usually through trauma, maybe lifetimes of trauma, that they can't think of themselves as being divine. But you see, neither one of these perspectives helps humanity. Now, I'm not demeaning either one of them. They both have a lot of work to do in terms of coming into an alignment that is whole and, may I say, pure. If you go back to the Hindu religion, but also the Islamic religion, is tremendously about purification. And there is a practice called the journey to the beloved, or to the into the light, really. But from an Islamic perspective, it's all about purification. And all of that prostrating, it's not for the profit. It's for the ego that doesn't want to bow down to anybody. And so there are these gemstones that have always been there, often marred by culture, so that one culture cannot see the gemstones of another culture. And this is what this expansion of the we is about, is learning to harvest from the gemstones of all. But even more, I tell people all the time, you were here when the Big Bang went off, all of that energy splattering across more space than you can even comprehend. You were watching, but not as an individual. You are part of the divine creative force that was going to manifest down the line in many, many, many forms, factors, faculties, facilities. You see, when you talk to scientists who really understand this, they will tell you that the fact that life emerged on this planet at all is almost unbelievable. There was something else going on that was not in the rocks. We say, well, the conditions were right. Well, what does that mean? Yes, they were right, but much more was right. This huge flow of divine creativity, was ready. And it started out as these little single cells, living cells, that had a path. Oh, maybe it was basic, but really, when you look at how quickly it took over the whole planet, it was just in an eye blink that life emerged into all of these forms. And it was an incredible thing, really, that no one could have predicted, understanding how the gases behaved in that explosion, or how they cooled, how the vibrations slowed down enough so that dense physical matter could congeal. I mean, there was a process for all of it. But that process is not separate from any other process going on in the cosmos. It's just that the divine was ready to manifest in this way at that point. And when you think about the divine, it's really very big. It's not some entity in the skies who likes this religion or that religion, or this set of spiritual practices and that set of, those were useful, but those come right out of the Aryan age, actually, and were carried into the Piscean age. But look at what was going on at the end of the Aryan Age. The pharaohs, I had a really difficult time because they were trying to bring people together. Because there were all these little tribes, and they had their own deities. And they fought with each other all the time because my deity's better than yours. It's bigger, it's more powerful, it does this, so on and so forth. But this was going on all over the planet, not just in Egypt. Egypt, in a way, really took the lead because with the dispensation of the pharaohs came a leader whose job was to unite the people. Now, this leader himself, of course, was not subject to the laws of the land. He had a free pass on everything. But most of them led fairly austere lives. They were kept away from the public. And they were gods, in a sense, or seen in this way. I had people waiting on them all the time. And their job was to be a wise ruler. It was to be the sun god, Ra. In fact, all through the Aryan Age, Ra appears in one form or another. It does today, too, by the way. But that Ra, that sun energy, to unite all these people who had their various demigods and who could not love each other or even understand they were the same thing. So I tell my students all the time, if you've got somebody in your life who's a problem, you need to remember that's just another piece of yourself, not your physical self, but this greater, vaster self that was watching as the universe burst forth. Well, the universe, actually the singularity burst forth, and we got at least one universe out of it. Some of us would say maybe more than that, you see?
Thank you. That's profound. And in line with what you're describing, it feels like one aspect that's very challenging for many of us in this transition time, in this time of transmutation and transformation, is that it almost feels like there are two timelines playing out on the planet. That there are many who are resisting this movement into new paradigms, new consciousness, and are clinging more fiercely to the power over paradigms. And as you said, coming out of fear, coming out of insecurity. But in that way, we're seeing some of the most intense shadow aspects of humanity playing out. And that paradigm of separation. And then there are those of us on this path of awakening, healing, moving into higher consciousness. But sometimes it feels like there are two different worlds at play,
there are
timelines.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And it's even more than timelines. The potent time, as one age moves into another, it is so creatively potent that if you know where to look, you will find some of everything that has ever been in this entire 2,500 years or so that you call the Piscean Age and before. You'll find some real hangovers from the Aquarian or the Aryan Age, because that's, you look at the pharaohs were trying to unite people. And that had to happen in order for the Piscean Age to come in, because it was the age of monotheism, where great spiritual teachers arose. And then people did whatever they did with their teachings. And that part's on humanity, you see. But and they use them, you're right, to separate, to say, well, you're good if you do it this way, you're bad if you don't. And the power of that need to separate is so compelling. Most people do not even know when they're in that trance of blame and pushing away and really going for other. So you're right. All of this is happening now with the hope that humanity will wake up and say, oh, this is a bad dream. I don't want to do this dream anymore, and let it go. Now, I make it sound as if it's totally easy. It is easier than most people think, but I don't want to sell the work short, because there's a lot of work to be done. But this sense that everything is in a pressure dome, you might say, is really accurate for what's going on right now. And one of the things, you may have noticed it too, you've done a lot of charts for people, but when people become insecure, there is a very compelling inner force to go back for what they think worked even though it didn't work. And so you'll see this even in the small space of a lifetime. Well, it's not comfort to have, even though I disagree with my parents, still I'm safe if I go back and I do that. So I'm, when life gets too challenging, not to trust that the cosmos has a plan, so much as to trust an old paradigm. This is a habit that humanity has done probably forever, but we can really see it now because we're on this cusp between two ages. And, it isn't like we can say, okay, this cusp goes from this date to this date, because there's no lines out there in space where when the planet crosses this, we're now in the Aquarian age. It doesn't work that way. It is an escalation of energy that gets stronger and stronger and stronger as the planet becomes more directly aligned with a new constellation. So it's all a process, as you clearly know, but basically this sense of being overloaded with debris, let's say, from the past is quite accurate. It's here. People feel it. They stumble around in it. Particularly those who have been on a path of awakening, they don't understand it. It looked like consciousness was really moving. Well, if you go back I like to go back to the 70s and the 80s, because I see that as a pretty open time. Certainly with psychology, therapists were taking off their clothes and getting in hot tubs with their clients. Now, I'm not saying I think that's the best way to heal, but I am saying that was a whole different scenario about getting real and being transparent and having nothing to hide. And that there was value in that. And I think though in those times, society as a whole was much more open. I mean, this was when Eastern religions were really taking root. It was the 60s and 70s, even though Yogananda was here in the 20s. But nonetheless, people weren't really letting it in until this time where they're talking about a new age, and it really made a difference. People had hope. Prior to that, they did not have hope for their spiritual traditions because the spiritual traditions weren't making the curve or the shift. Some got very, very rigid. And see, the humanity isn't the same today as it was in 1900. It just isn't. And you can see that in the proliferation of technology. This was the overexpansion of the head center. Now we've got some catching up to do with the heart, frankly. But here's the problem. It's not really a problem, but it is something people are confronted with. Those who have really been developing their hearts, they feel all the dissonance in the society. It's not just a fact. It is something that sometimes makes people sick, and their insides churn because they've grown so sensitive to the disharmony, knowing they didn't come in to do disharmony. Anybody living now came in to greet this new age. But they're stuck. They feel the disharmony in their own system because it is so palpable outwardly. And so this is a remarkable time of cutting through illusions, because even the illusion of being, even the notion of being a separate self is an illusion. Now, it's practical in some ways. A child needs two parents or a parent or someone functioning in the parental role to guide and to sometimes chastise a little bit and say, oh, no, you do have to clean up your room. In fact, this whole time that we're in right now, people can use very well what they learned from their mothers who said, no, you have to clean up your room. It's a planetary room cleanup right now. See? And we can use all of that. But you are absolutely correct about what people are feeling. The tug of war that's in them pulling one direction against another. It's very real and very palpable. Now, not real in the cosmic sense because it will pass. But this is maybe one of the biggest lessons in life is trying to learn the difference between what is real and what is only really experienced. They're not the same. What is really experienced is exceedingly compelling, because the senses partake in that, the emotions, all of that participates, and sometimes the mind is busily judging it as well. And so it's at least a 3-system hologram here. And people who have been evolving all this time saying, oh, I'm coming into the time that will honor the vibration that I am. Those people feel it probably more deeply than many of the rest. Those who are just on a fact-finding mission, they still have plenty to work with, in terms of nowadays what's true and what's false. Who would have thought facts could be mutable? They aren't really. But so there's plenty to work on for the head center as well. But the heart center right now is really feeling a lot. And the gut center too is in some people, I find it confused, because that old idea of, you see, when you could trust that people were going to give you a fair and truthful version of their experience, that allowed for that gut to flourish, because there was a level of trust there. I wouldn't just make something up to fool you. Well, nowadays, that tactic is really being employed at many, many, many levels of consciousness. And so that messes with that guts. See, the gut is what hones in and knows where it is and grounds and so on. And when its truth factor has been compromised, the gut is all over the place, or it can be. It is. I don't mean it is in everyone, but it can be very confusing for the gut to know where it is in time, in space, and even in one's own life. So yes, what you're speaking to is utterly palpable, and it is having a lot of effects on people right now, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you spoke to it so compassionately. I think it's so intense for those who are empathically feeling the
Yes.
suffering that's going on the earth right now, and the suffering with the planet herself.
Yes. And we must remind people that all of that angst is for a purpose. It's not just something that's you're out of alignment because you can't get out of bed today. You're so depressed about what's happening in Gaza or whatever. That's all really experienced. And you experience it if you're one of these empathic people, because others can't. It's your offering to the total experience of what it is to be human. And all of those others need your experience, just like you need a little bit of their experience. Doesn't mean we have to convert one way of thinking or being, but it does mean that anytime anyone is going through something that tends to overwhelm them because it's so big, you have to know you're not doing this because it's fun. You already know that, but you're doing it so that those who don't naturally have this empathetic sense can see what's going on for you, can maybe feel into that a little bit, and perhaps raise their empathetic levels. So there's a purpose for all of it. And you're right. Right now, it's hard if you're an empath. It's very hard if you're an empath. Or if you're learning to be an empath, it can be very confusing. But basically, this is where we are. And so you have to look at whatever hardships you go through. Just say, I'm doing this for humanity. This is very hard for me, but somehow, may this free somebody somewhere. Or may this contribute to the overall healing of what's trying to present for being healed right now. May I see it? May I love it into wholeness? And may I offer it back? It's powerful to think in that way, isn't it?
Oh, incredibly powerful. And it feels like you're also saying to find a way to stay centered in the midst of it all and aware of the larger unfolding that's taking place.
Exactly. You don't want to get lost in it. And that is problematic for some people. Whether it's in one's own feeling range, or whether it's by the flows of politics that are so demeaning right now, and being absorbed by something that sort of takes over a person. You don't want to lose yourself. You always want to know where your core is. And that core is holy. It is put there by the divine. It is your connection to the divine. and everyone else's as well. And so it's not dogmatic. The divine doesn't do religious dogma. That's what humans do. The divine just loves and shines like that star Kathlyn was telling you about. It radiates, it burns with truth. And I don't know about you, but what I'm seeing is that people are really hungry for truth right now, even those who will perpetuate a lie for the sake of 15 minutes of fame.
Well, thank you, Master, for this wisdom and for the ways that you're guiding us and supporting us in this incredible time of change.
Well, thank you. Thank you for really doing the kind of inner work you're doing with the book. It's what I would want for everyone. Because, you eventually people will realize, oh, I'm a timeless being. I'm not just in this little package of this life. But it allows one to remember those roots even before they took birth this life, maybe before they took birth 1,000 lifetimes ago, to remember the essence from which they came and to build that up and allow it to just shine through them. You see, that is the supreme work of this time. And it will take many forms, many forms. So thank you for honoring me and Kathlyn and really looking deeply and seriously at this text, because as far as I can see, there isn't another one like it on the planet right now. You can get historical perspectives, but they're usually all steeped in culture, and it's not just a timeline of this happened and then that happened and that. What did these happenings do to people? That's really what has caused people to either move toward spirituality or move away from it, because it's in their divine essence. It's there. So I so appreciate you. And I hope reading the book has actually been helpful for you in your own work, as well as in your own spiritual journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank
So
you.
to you and all your viewers, I love you. I bless you. And I'm doing this walk with you. You're not alone.
Thank you.
I thank you.
Thank you, Kathlyn.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. Thank you for receiving him and this message and really the goodness and kind of straight arrow truth that he offers.
Very powerful and very clear and very compassionate about this time of death rebirth that we're in.
Yes. And it's struggle, people struggle when they die sometimes, and a lot of people struggle when they're born. Neither of those transitions are easy from an earthly perspective. And I'm so glad you could feel his compassion, because my sense of him is that he is just this field of compassionate beauty that he wants us to feel. Oh, he so wants us to feel whole.
Well, thank you for the work that you've been doing, for this collaboration, for the ways in which you are also bringing that love and wisdom onto the planet in this time. So thank you, Kathlyn, and thank you for being in this conversation.
You're welcome. And thank you for your acknowledgement. It means a great deal. So.
And blessings and love to all of you listening, and for the way in which this community is working so consciously to collaborate together to move in to these new paradigms. Blessings and love to all of you.